funnily enough, during the ad break, we were just talking about the fact that Tonya does not look old enough to have a 27-year-old daughter and that Nigel looks much older than he really is.
Yes.
And
which brings us on to the new retirement age.
Thank you.
Well, there you go.
I'm joking. Although that smoking doesn't do you much good, although I know it makes you happy. Now, retirement age being lifted to potentially 71, but this is in a few years, though, Nigel, right?
Yeah, it would be in a few years. I mean, you're talking about 66 now, 67 from 2026, then 68 from 2044. That's the plan at the moment. Had we actually done something about all this 50 years ago, when we knew there was an ageing population, the problems it would cause, you could have actually raised the state pension age very, very gradually, so you'd hardly notice it, say a month a year over that period, but governments were too concerned about votes and they ignored it. So now we're in crisis. If you are going to raise the pension age, you're going to have to bring in some more laws to stop employers getting rid of older workers. Because there's this huge gap that exists between people being laid off from the jobs they've had for ages and then having to wait for a pension. The default pension age where a company could retire you at 65, that's gone. The trouble is they now make people redundant instead. And if they've got to wait years for a pension, there's a real problem.
Is this going to be, Nigel, before we bring in Tonya, is this going to be on Labour's watch? Because the Tories aren't going to do this before a general election.
No, they wouldn't touch it before a general election. And we'll see what Labour do with that. I mean, this is
a difficult one for them.
Yeah, this is actually from a think tank, so it's not a policy or anything like that. But yes, I mean, the pension age will have to rise because the cost is now becoming prohibitive.
And I was just going to say, Tonya, in the way that politicians have kicked this into the long grass, I think a lot of individuals also do when it comes to our pension age. It's not necessarily something we sit around thinking about or planning for.
We don't, and those of us that do and have set up things in order not to have to wait for a government pension, being trashed by the government to try and keep any of the things that we were trying to do. Like, you know, a lot of people I know had buy-to-let, second homes, things like that, thinking, right, OK, that'll be my pension.
Yeah.
And because of what the government have done recently with the insurance, everyone's having to sell everything, so they're not, you know...
Which means big, ruthless landlords will snap up the properties and be bad landlords.
Yes, exactly.
Big companies.
Because all the people that I know who have got buy-to-let properties, for example, it was for their pension.
Yeah.
And they're great landlords, you know, because it's one or two little buildings that they care a lot about. Whereas once these big companies get it, forget it. So I don't know what's going to happen. You know, if you were telling me now that, you know, I've got a kind of job that I maybe not love and have to then do it till I'm 71 years old, I would be very distressed about this. I mean, if these rules were going to come in now, then anybody who's at the age of 53 would be thinking about working to 71.
And isn't it about the fact that we don't have a savings culture at all anymore, particularly the younger generation, Nigel? They're very spendy.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're young, you don't think about your pension. I mean, they just don't. I think the real problem there, and this is where younger workers might start resenting it, at the moment, 3.5 workers work to provide the pensions of existing pensioners. It's a myth, the idea that you save for your own pension. And you actually pay for the current pensioners, and so it goes on. What's going to happen by 2030 is that only 2.5 workers will be supporting pensioners. That means they're going to be paying more in tax. So there is a point where I've not noticed any resentment by younger people paying for pensioners, but I wonder if that might in fact happen in the future.
But going back to what you said about nobody saves anymore, this all happened during the Blair time, where he was giving out credit cards for, you know, like they were toffees, and not worrying about getting payment back. Everyone felt Feel Good Britain, all of that stuff, because everyone had cash to spend, because suddenly everyone could have this. I mean, there was a haloed figure, it was about 130k that people get into debt till, because he wanted everybody to be able to spend and feel good while he was Prime Minister. And now everyone's suffering from that. Pre that time, people were saving. And this is the problem now. We've got to get out of that kind of
and
borrowing.
also, and interest rates, of course. We had such low interest rates for so long that people didn't mind getting into a little bit of debt, whereas now, obviously, it's all gone a bit wrong.